So, Steve, would you like to hear a little fun factoid about our podcast?
Oh, hey, I am all about the fun factoids, and I'm actually kind of interested in our podcast as well. So,
hey, look at that. You're my perfect target demographic for this piece of data I'm about to share with you. So, you're a numbers guy, right? So I think you'll find this interesting. Do you know that we've been doing this for 6 months?
What? No, I did not know that. A. B. Time flies when you're anyway. So
time flies when you're having a great pod with your main professor, bro.
Oh, it's dude. This has been so fun, and I am genuinely a little bit shocked that it does not feel like 6 months. Although in some ways it feels like we've been at this for a while. I mean, just in terms of how much we've learned, how much we've grown, our rapport, the fact that we can finish each other's sentences, many times.
Yeah, well, I kind of feel like I've known you for like 20 years. Well, probably more like 50 years, but that's not really possible. But so 6 months, I'm kind of like, yeah, that makes sense. Like 6 months, cool. But when I went on Spotify and I kind of counted it out, this episode that we're currently recording is our 30th episode, which means that we've put out every single week for 30 weeks straight an episode. For some reason, that hit me way harder than the 6 month mark. I don't know why.
That's a lot of work, man.
Yeah, maybe it's because we're aware of the amount of work that each episode takes. Could be. I don't know. It's cool. But I love the idea of a back catalog. And I'm just thinking, it's like, dude, like when I'm scrolling through the back catalog, it's like we actually have like a sizable amount of content here, and you don't notice it because you kind of, you're so involved in the week by week production of it all. And when you look back, you're like, dude, this is so fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. I guess my fondest hope would be that there's something in those 30 episodes for our audience. If they want to go back through the back catalog, they would see a topic or two where it's like, what they're talking about. Like COVID and anxiety, what's that about? And there could be something really useful there. We're talking about like, how can I use a light box to reset my body clock? That could be really useful. I think we've covered a really crazy array of different topics in a way that honestly is a little bit shockingly ambitious. But,
shockingly ambitious would be a pretty good tagline to describe us, I feel like. Yeah.
And if we ever
our greatest strength and our weakness probably at the same time.
And if we ever decide to start a band, not a bad band name.
Ooh, shockingly ambitious. Yeah, I love that. So we wanted to hop on with you guys and give a little bit of an update at the 6 month mark. Steve and I kind of behind the scenes, we did this maybe like a month ago where we're like, okay, we're coming up to the half a year mark. And for long-time listeners who like are way back, jumped in whenever we were doing the mental health and COVID series that kind of Steve alluded to there way back in January, at peak Omicron when we launched the pilot episodes of this podcast, we were reflecting and we basically were like, look, we are halfway through the journey that we kind of set out to do. And what I mean by that is we said, look, we're going to give this thing a really good, solid year. The first year is going to be our pilot year. We're going to put everything we have behind it. And if it takes off, we'll do this indefinitely and we'll really enjoy doing it. And if it doesn't work out, well, then at the year point, we'll maybe have to sit down and kind of reflect and see, okay, what makes sense going forward? Is it going to be a weekly episode? Is it going to be bi-weekly? Is it going to be monthly? Yada, 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 yada. So we reviewed kind of like all of the data. We reviewed all of the content we put out so far. And both of us kind of had this sense that we have covered a lot of content. But whenever we look at the stuff that has got the most feedback, and I'm not just talking about listens here, I'm talking about people reaching out and thanking us, people reaching out and saying, more of this, please. 9 times out of 10, it's on the topic of depression. And we probably could have seen that coming, given who we both are, But we have kind of made the decision to really, at this 6 month mark, niche down, double down, as it were, into the topic of depression, to go a little bit deeper and niche down with the kind of goal of we want to specifically serve a more specific audience, and that is around the theme, of course, of depression.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we're both a little simultaneously excited and conflicted because, as you probably picked up, if you've listened to Hugh and I at all over the last few months, we have very broad interests. We care about a lot. We care about a lot of different things, and but it turns out that, well, okay, two things. Number one, so for those of you who don't know, I'm a clinical psychologist, I'm a professor, I'm a researcher, I'm a writer, and most of my work over 30 plus years of my career has been in the space of major mood disorder, particularly clinical depression and suicidality, and really most particularly, how can we address this staggering burden of disability and suffering and loss of life even that accompanies clinical depression. Now, it turns out that depression very, very commonly co-occurs with lots of other forms of psychological distress, disorder, suffering, many other forms of mental illness. So the rate of co-occurrence, comorbidity, if I can use the term of art, just as a for example, between depression and some clinical anxiety disorder, it's about a 50-50 overlap. So if somebody has clinical depression, about a 50% chance they also have a diagnosable anxiety disorder. Very high likelihood that they may also have some sort of substance use issue for many, not a trivial elevated risk of eating disorder, lots of other forms of psychological distress. And so basically, just to be very clear about it, what we want to do for the next number of months is drill down much deeper with a much clearer, more specific focus on clinical depression, because that's what our audience is asking us for. That's where most of my work has been. But I also want to reassure those of you who have kind of enjoyed and valued the podcast, because we do like to pan out and go very wide. We're going to continue doing that. But the anchoring point, the single focus and fixation to anchor our content going forward is going to be depression, at least for the foreseeable future. Yeah. And what I mean by that is at least over the next 6 months, because that'll round out the end of our 1-year pilot experiment for this podcast. The other thing Hugh wanted me to mention is both of us have a kind of a, Hugh, can I use the word trippy? Both of us are a little bit trippy. Oh, yeah.
That's too.
And I don't mean that in the literal psychedelic intake sense of the word, because, you know, I'm not a frequent flyer that way. No judgment here. But we'll have an episode on, as we've already promised, on psychedelics and depression. Both of us believe that sometimes in our lives, the universe, can I say that? The universe with a capital U, that life has a way of opening doors. Life has a way of often confirming, like, hey, you're on the right path or you're not on the right path. And just at the time when we were contemplating this shift in the podcast, my publisher got in touch with me. My editor got in touch, and she said, hey, your book, The Depression Cure, is still, you know, you wrote it over a decade ago, and it's still very fresh. It's still getting a lot of readership, but we would love it if you would consider updating it, expanding it, coming out with a second edition of it. In other words, re-immersing yourself, Steve, in the entire world of depression, and most importantly, how can we actually leverage what we know scientifically about how the way we live can protect us and heal us from clinical depression. So it just felt like an extraordinary kind of convergence of, oh, well, I'm going to be re-immersed in all of this world of depression anyway for the next 6 months while I'm updating my book. Bounced it off Hugh, and I don't want to speak for you, Hugh, but I felt like you saw it very similarly.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, if you've been listening to us for a while, you know that service is really at the heart of what we're doing. And from my perspective as the producer of this show, I was starting to see like an interesting trend where people would jump into the mental health multiverse, as it were, through the door of whatever specific disorder that they were struggling with or that they had someone connected to that they loved in their life. So, people would jump on with anxiety, or people would jump on with, say, ADHD. And then the next episode would come out and they're like, but like, where's more of the thing that I'm here for? Because I want to go on a longer journey with you guys towards healing, towards freedom, towards management, blah, 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 blah. And so this move is ultimately rooted in our desire to go on a journey with you guys. And we believe that what we have to say and our own experience, whether it's professional or personal, on depression is the best way that we can give you the highest form of whatever we have to give. And so, as Steve mentioned, the serendipitous nature of Depression Cure 2.0 in terms of the book, we just said, look, this is definitely a sign from the universe. Let's go for it. And while we're at it, why not just rebrand to Depression Cure? And so that is what the show is going to become over the next couple of weeks and months.
Yeah, and so I don't want anybody to be shocked or just a little bit. I mean, yeah, that's probably overstating it. I don't want anybody to be confused. How about that? Confused by like, wait, I thought this was the mental health podcast, and now you're calling it Depression Cure podcast. Is it the same lineup? Yes, it's Hugh and Steve. Same format? Yeah, mostly, although we have decided to make a little bit of a change there as well. Why? Number one, we find that just the couple of interviews that we've done, we were kind of self-consciously not wanting to mimic the interview format that most other podcasts have, where it's like a host or two hosts, and they bring in like, some fresh person every single week. And it's like, okay, well, that's been done a million times. And we thought, maybe we have enough to say just between the two of us. Which, by the way, turns out to be the good news and the bad news. The good news is we do have a lot to say. The bad news is that for us, that our audience, it's not bad news. It's actually, they're both good news. Our audience really enjoys hearing us bounce ideas off of guests and vice versa. So here's what we're going to do. Every month, we're going to have 4 episodes a month. One of those episodes will be an interview. With an expert or with a fellow traveler, somebody who's been battling depression or dealing with depression in some specific way. We're going to have one episode a month that is pure Q&A, question and answer, us responding to our audience. Often, ideally, if you're willing to go on our Patreon page or the podcast homepage and record your question. So we'll play your actual question, the recorded audio of that on air.
It's just way more fun, isn't it?
It's more fun. Absolutely. Especially because we get to hear all the cool accents, because we have a truly international audience, and love to do that. But hey, listen, if you're shy, if you get a little bit microphone or camera shy, just type it out. We'll read it on air.
Because we're trying as much as possible to turn it into a conversation,
Absolutely.
And we like that dialectic relationship, don't we?
Everybody take a shot of fish oil now. We use one of our, or if you're playing Steve and Hugh bingo, then I think that was maybe one of the central tiles that you get to cover now. So every month, 4 episodes. 1 is an interview, 1 will be Q&A, and then 2 will be fresh content. Just primarily the two of us discussing, and by the way, if you've listened to us, that that part of the magic, I think, if I can use that term, Hugh, I'm going to use the word magic. Part of the magic of our partnership, our collaboration, is you get, we're very different. So you've got the scientist and the poet. You've got the American Irishman. You've got the old geezer.
And the young geezer.
And the young, I'm not a boomer, but I'm boomer adjacent. I'm
boomer adjacent.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Zoomer adjacent. But so by the way, if you're keeping score at home, technically I'm Gen X, and Hugh is technically millennial, although early millennial.
I'm on the fine. I walk a thin line between millennial and whatever comes next. I can't actually remember.
Gen Z or Zoomer.
Gen Z. Yeah.
iGen. Yeah. And I'm kind of on the cusp. I'm on this side of Gen X, but kind of close to Boomer. All right. So part of the magic of the show is you've got a clinician / scientist, and you've got a writer, poet, producer, podcaster, and the magic, I think, is that as we share our very, very different perspectives, as they come together and we bounce off each other, I think there's a lot of value and a lot of discovery for both of us, and ideally for our audience as well, that we're able to unearth, excavate novel perspectives and insights, and hopefully things that are actionable and usable for each of you in your own journey. And by the way, even if you've never dealt with depression personally, a lot of what we're going to be covering in the months ahead will still be relevant, because many of the same strategies that are useful in protecting or healing from depression are useful in protecting and healing from excessive life stress and insomnia and, overwhelm and anxiety. And so there's going to be a lot of useful material no matter where you happen to be. And then finally, sadly, all of us have loved ones, people, friends, family that we deeply care about, who are absolutely afflicted with clinical depression right here, right now, who are suffering enormously. Some of them, and I'm thinking about some people that are very near and dear to me, who have tried so many different treatments that have not been particularly helpful. Because they're in my family, sometimes they're a little bit less, they see me more as Steve, their family member, rather than
Dude,
Dr.
a prophet's
Steve.
not welcome in his hometown. Let's be real.
Dude, it's hilarious. And I could tell you so many stories of family members where I've said, hey, I'm just thinking it might be useful to blah, 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 blah.
And then Cardi B says it, and they're like, oh my gosh.
Yes, all that. And then they come back and they're like, yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, bro. I just could not accept it from you.
Or my favorite version is, dude, Steve, family member Steve, have you ever heard that omega-3 is really powerful in treating depression? You're like, no, family member, I have not. Yeah.
Do tell, please. What have you learned on the interwebs? So anyway, I genuinely expect and hope that for all of you in the weeks and months ahead, you're gonna be connecting to a lot of material that's going to resonate. And ideally, if you have somebody in your life that you think could benefit, then you could share it with them. It's super easy just to send the link over, with your phone or email, whatever. So yeah, that's our plan, and we're really excited about it. We're also, as you may be able to hear in both of our voices,
fear and trepidation, man.
Yeah, a little fear and trembling.
100%. It's the unknown. It's the ultimate human fear. Let's go. Although I do love that Joseph Campbell quote where it's like the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. And I kind of feel like we're kind of starting off on like another journey. Like, yes, it's a continuation of the journey we were just on, but there is kind of like that kind of butterflies in the stomach. And, let's be honest, there's a lot of work to do as well. And so because of that, Steve and I have made the decision we're going to take a month off to, are you ready? This is my big hashtag moment.
This is so brilliant.
Recoup, regroup, and rebrand.
The alliteration, the poetry, we could just riff off words, rejuvenate, refresh, recover. I don't know what do you got there? You're like repent,
retire. No, I'm joking.
Hey, those are fighting words there. That hits a little too close to home. No, there's no retiring happening here.
Yeah, and look, we like to practice what we preach. We believe in self-care. We believe in buffers and boundaries and going slow as opposed to burning out. So, we really want to give this new show everything that it deserves. We're going to take a lot of time over the next few weeks and months here to build up our buffer as much as possible. Putting out a weekly show, there's a lot of work involved. it just takes one or two kind of cancellations, or somebody gets sick, or there's an emergency, or I don't know, your Wi-Fi doesn't work, and you can quickly kind of burn through the shows that you have kind of on deck. So we want to do this the right way. We want to do it in a way that we can consistently maintain, and having this little month break is going to really, really help us make that possible and deliver the show that we want to continue delivering for you guys.
Yeah, so just to be really explicit about it, we decided, talking a few weeks ago, that it would really be good for both of us to take the month of August to recharge and basically to re-envision what the pod's going to look like for us and for you all. So we're going to press the pause button for the month of August. And then we're going to come back, and we're really excited about what it's going to look like and feel like and sound like as we come back in the fall. But for the time being, you know, what we're hoping is, if you have not been with us from the very beginning, and you know, I'm talking about like mid-January when we launched 2022. We have a pretty cool back catalog, I think. Now, I'm horribly biased, but I think most of our listeners probably have not caught every episode, and so
Sure.
This is our gentle invitation to maybe consider just scrolling back through the back catalog and seeing if there might not be something there. If you're missing your weekly dose of Steve and Hugh and lots of dad humor at varying levels of skill and effectiveness. And by varying, I mean mostly low, but occasionally, you know. Maybe consider checking out that back catalog.
That's awesome. And like, I guess just to start to land the plane, as I often say at the end of episodes, I just kind of want to take a moment just to thank everybody who has been on this journey so far, whether you're a long-time listener or, you know, you're just kind of been jumping in for the last few weeks. But I especially want to give a thanks to everyone who supports the show on our Patreon. You know, we've said from the start, this is a crowdfunded show. We rely 100% on the generosity of the people who are passionate about this project. And so we are really excited for this next step, because we, as part of everything that we've kind of talked about, we want to refocus. Oh no, I just used another re.
Oh, another re.
It just came out. I didn't. I promise it was unintentional. But you know, we really want to kind of double down on our Patreon efforts over the next few months, and we're going to start releasing things that are only for the Patreon community as part of this new show. And so we're really excited to relook at that. Oh no, I can't stop saying re. It's like a bad tick now.
I'm gonna just rejoice. So,
oh man,
yeah, it is bad. Well, so what I feel like
what he's trying to say is thank you very much.
Yeah,
like,
we're both
from the bottom of our hearts. Like, we really appreciate you, and we're excited to do this next thing with you.
Yeah, thank you. I could not have said that any better myself. And I mean, it's been so fulfilling, gratifying, humbling to be a part of this journey with those of you who have been on it with us. But I also want to say, as we move forward, if we're going to be able to continue producing these, I think, pretty thoughtful and informative shows, we ultimately will need to build a community of fellow travelers that are willing to actually support us financially, because this is a labor of love. We're very intentional about not doing ads. You'll never hear an ad on one of our shows. We don't have any sponsors, and that's by design. We could have some, but you know, by design, we don't want them. And what that means then is that because it's pretty costly to do this, and I won't bore you with all the details, but let's just say, you know, if we're not able over the next year or so to have at least 1,000 people in our audience who are willing to partner with us, join with us, and say, yes, we will sponsor the show. And we're talking, I mean, it could be any amount, but like for many of you, $5 a month. That's like one cup of coffee, latte or something. For some, $10 a month. Some of you could afford more than that, 20, 50, whatever it happens to be. We have a couple of folks who've been even more generous than that. But if we don't have that kind of support at a certain point, our seed money is running out. And so I don't want to burden our audience with that. I don't want you to worry about us or the show, but just to put it out there, because I think some of you probably, feel like, well, there's so many different things that I could spend money on. Why go to the trouble to sponsor the show? And it's like, well, if this is valuable to you, there's a way that you can actually return the favor to us. And it's not to us. It's not, we're not making anything from the show. We have no interest in monetizing it per se, but it does cost money just to keep this coming. So what do you say, Hugh? Is that, that's probably actually more direct than you would have been, but
no. Like I love, and you've accidentally stumbled into a well-known, tried and tested artistic principle called 1,000 True Fans. Have you heard about this?
Yeah.
And I love that idea. Like, for any project to succeed, it takes 1,000 people who love it, and so that's a high bar for us as creators. Is we want to create something that's so exciting and so valuable and so worthwhile that 1,000 people want to support it. Like, it's a really, really high bar. And so we feel the challenge of that. We're excited about it. And we're really keen to move forward and reach that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. I hadn't made the connection, but I mean, we have a bigger audience than that, but it's one thing to be just a sort of casual member of an audience, as opposed to a fellow traveler or somebody who's really wanting to partner with us and join with us.
And I think something we've said time and time again is, if you have the means to do so,
yes, like absolutely.
In no way are we trying to guilt anybody or pressure somebody into doing something here that would hurt them or that wouldn't even just work for them. But for those of you who have the means, it's an opportunity to basically pay the way for everybody else. And so, like I said before, we really appreciate everyone who is currently doing that. And we look forward to welcoming the next kind of groups of people.
Love it. Yes, that's so well put. And listen, both of us have been at places in our own lives when money was really tight, and like, $5-10 a month was not trivial. And
100%.
So if that's where you are, please hear very clearly from us. We don't want you to give us anything. We'd rather you just drop us a quick note and say, hey, I'm part of your 1,000. I love this show. I'm joining you in spirit.
Yeah.
And we'll put you on the patron list. We'll make sure you have access to all the cool content that only patrons get, if that's where you are. For us, this is a labor of love, as I've said many times, and we rejoice with every fellow traveler that we run into.
Awesome. So look, last thing I want to say, Steve, you're prophetic. You said this would be a 30-minute episode, and here we are, like right there on the cusp of it.
It's a gift. It's a gift.
I'm not sure if you make your prediction and then you intentionally try to maneuver in such a way that you hit that, or if it's just this intuition that you've clearly been blessed with.
maybe a little of both.
I mean, look, the last thing for me is we really want to push the Q&A episodes. We've really, really enjoyed doing them. I'm going to just speak out of term here and just say that it's actually my favorite thing about the show, because I love that conversational element to it. It is so meaningful and so valuable, and for some reason I just feel like it's the episodes we have the most fun on as well. So please reach out. You can go to the website mentalhealth.fm. That website will still continue to be there. The contact page there is where you can use the fancy little online recorder to submit your voice message, and Steve and I will get cracking on these as they come in and start to release them over the next few months. So look, Steve, I have nothing else other than gratitude.
I think we've hit all the bases today, and as usual, it's been a lot of fun and a privilege. So thank you all again. And we'll see you. We'll talk to you at least in a month's time. So until then, be well.
Be well. See you later, guys.